Final topic here. Let's look ahead at the weekend. So we got Bellator or PFL. I don't even know what to call it anymore, but we got the Bellator Championship Series Paris brought to you by the PFL going up against the UFC. One's on Friday, one's on Saturday, but still competing for that weekend attention. What are we looking at here? What do you think is the most interesting card, guys? Let's start with Mike. What are you eyeing here between these two events?
So my birthday is this weekend, so I'm taking the weekend off and getting blackout and enjoying this.
You're telling me you're not going to have your phone?
I'm thinking
and
no,
and
but
checking the results on MMAJunkie.com. No,
maybe we'll see. We'll see how good it goes. But and more sincerely, I think like the UFC card top to bottom probably better, but the fight I'm most intrigued in of the whole weekend is Patchy Mix versus Magomedov, and I think that's a great fight. And Patchy Mix is arguably the best bantamweight in the world. So anytime he gets to compete, I think it's a treat and something you need to go out of your way to watch. That's Friday. Obviously, Cedric Doumbé is intriguing as well, given what happened in his last fight. How does he rebound from that? So I do think the more interesting matchup is Patchy Mix, maybe the most interesting fighter, but I think the UFC probably just, it's a UFC card. It's going to be better top to bottom than pretty much anything else a rival promotion can put on, except for minor exceptions.
Yeah. Matt, Dan, what do you guys think?
I think, like what Mike said, overall, I think the UFC card is better, but you get the opportunity to see one of the best fighters in the world in Patchy Mix on the Bellator side. But I do like this entire main card in the UFC, man. Like each fight is interesting for the main card. As Dan, I think, kind of hinted at earlier, like we have a solid main card with no fights higher than 170 pounds. So it should be a lot of good action, a lot of solid matchups. And there's a lot of names that I'm interested to see how they perform. Angela Hill, I want to see how Adrian Yanez bounces back. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Thimba Grimbo, like his story, will he continue his nice start to his UFC run? Chaos Williams is back as well. And then, of course, the main event, I think, is just going to be a banger for however long it lasts. If it goes a distance, whatever, I think it's going to be a whole lot of violence in that one. So I just think top to bottom, the UFC card's more interesting. But you have to watch the Patchy Mix fight at some point. Whether you watch it live or watch it on replay, whatever, you got to check that fight out for sure.
Dan, let me ask you about Patchy Mix. This card goes down on a Friday. I think we all agree that's probably the more interesting fight. And maybe even the most relevant, right? Like a lot of people are considering Patchy Mix to be, maybe the best bantamweight on the planet. I don't know if we're having the same conversation for Barbosa and Murphy, but is he or is he not? And how close do you put him among the best? Because it's hard to gauge always with fighters competing outside of the UFC. But from what you've seen with Patchy Mix, is he one of the best fighters in the world? Bantamweights?
It is. Yeah, it is very tough. And I would think that you're not crazy to make that argument, even based on what we've seen and going off of his ceiling for potential. The guy's a huge bantamweight. I think that's the biggest enemy, is him being able to consistently make that weight. I think we've seen pictures now that he's training at Extreme Couture. You see him next to like former 135ers, but 145ers now, like Aljo and other 145ers. And he's bigger than these guys, And even speaking to 145ers in the gym, and I don't speak, I try to not speak out of school, but I feel like this is fair. And I will just say that if you think Patchy Mix is just, athletic or just grapply or just a back take guy, do not sleep on his striking. I've had it on very good authority that, he is giving some very noted strikers who are known for their knockouts. And I'm asking these guys, because I train under them, how Patchy Mix, how it's like going with Patchy. And even just in the striking, they're saying that, he does better than fighters that you'd be like, no way, he's more of a tough challenge in the striking department than that fighter. Well, apparently that's the word on the ground. So this guy is still growing, still getting better. I'm really excited for Patchy Mix. Great shout this weekend, guys. It's definitely the fight I'm looking forward to most, despite shouts to the UFC for finally giving us like a 145 headliner, despite, doing Lerone Murphy dirty and burying him on the prelims all this time. But that is nice to see. That is nice to see UFC.
Real quick, let's go around prediction. Magomedov, that dude's tough. He's pretty damn good against Patchy Mix. Prediction. Is it unanimous? We're all going with Patchy Mix on this one?
Mix.
Right. We've seen it before, so we'll repeat it, I think.
So sorry?
We've seen it before, so I think we'll repeat it. Yep.
All right, let's talk about the UFC now. That'll be going down on Saturday. Edson Barbosa versus Lerone Murphy headlining this event. This is just pure heaven right now for Dan Tom getting 245ers to headline a card. So Pretty damn good fight here. Let's talk about these two guys individually. Let's start first with Barbosa. I believe he's on a 2-fight win streak, has looked pretty damn good recently. He's up there in age, but all of a sudden it kind of feels like he's having like a second heir to his career. Will it be enough to make a title run? What do you guys think? Let's start with Mike. Does Edson Barbosa have another title run in him?
Man, featherweight's just too tough. I'd like to say yes. But man, I just don't think he's going to be able to get through all these killers. Like, they're putting in some tough fights, but I do think he's capable of beating some of these dudes. He's on sharp. He's got the weight cut, obviously nailed at this point, and the most fight of the night bonuses in UFC history. So that's a pretty awesome accolade, and I could very easily see him getting one more to the list there.
Matt, what do you think? You got faith on Barbosa?
No, I see. I like Murphy in this fight. I mean, obviously, just because of his record and what he's done so far in the UFC, but I think it's just like a kind of one of those crossroads fights, right? And then also, if you look at Barbosa in main events, he's 1-3 in UFC main events, so that record doesn't bode very well for him as well. But you know, it'd be different if it was a co-main. He's 6-3 in co-mains. You know, when
that's the whole difference, right? You just fought a little bit earlier.
Tough style to fight over 5 rounds.
Exactly. So I like Murphy in this spot though, but it very well could be, you know, a fight of the night, back and forth sort of war that we just saw with him and Youssef.
Yeah, for sure. Dan, just real quick on Lerone Murphy's upside. As you mentioned, this is a guy that for whatever reason, he's kind of been buried, but he's been fucking killing it at 145 pounds. I'm not sure why he hasn't gotten more attention, why the UFC hasn't really tried to push him further, keeping in mind, you know, he does have an important market behind him. He's finally getting some shine here. Main event, nice name in Edson Barbosa. What's his upside? Are we looking at a future champion, title contender? What should people know about him?
See, this is the tough part because I'm paid to break down cards from top to bottom, right? So that's how I have to prioritize. I do the main events first, and then I go to the main cards. That's why I'm very upset with the way they book it, because I know that I'm going to, no matter what, I'm going to have to break down fighters on the main card. And prelim fighters, I don't often get a chance to get around to. And even on fight night, I'm just so busy and dedicating my so much time to having these wrong takes and picks come fight night, which is amazing feeling, by the way, that I barely have time to watch the prelims. This is why I get particularly annoyed, because then it comes time to have to write a fighter profile where, in my defense, you go to MMAJunkie.com for my in-depths, to not just for the technical stuff, but I'll give you like backgrounds in their martial arts. Like you'll find stuff about like their regional stuff, or martial arts and their regional. Like, I go over everything in those things, but unfortunately those things take me a while to do, and they come out late week. I don't know. The last one came out on Saturday, so I don't know if all my breakdowns are coming out fight day, which that means you guys have to wait till then. And UFC broadcasters, if you're listening, I know your hay is already in the barn by then, so hit me up if you need any southpaw stats or anything like that. But yeah, I got to honestly look more into Murphy. So as embarrassing as it is for the analysts to not have takes, it's also kind of tough because we just turn around from this. And again, I actually got to show my work on multiple platforms and mediums. I can't just willy-nilly be like, hey, he's the favorite, he's the young guy, he's going to win. But the odds makers and the public are favoring Lerone Murphy. We'll see where I end up. We're going to have to, check out my in-depth breakdown on fight day, probably for MMA Junkie.
All right, guys.
Good
Stay
plug.
tuned. Yeah, great plug. Stay tuned for that. Looking forward to that analysis, Dan.